In 5 months' time, on May the 25th, 2024, Jupiter will be leaving Taurus and moving into the sign of Gemini. So, in today's show, I'm going to be shedding light in terms of the significance of that, because Jupiter leaves the kind of tangible world of Earth and goes into the air element of Gemini. And what it's signaling is this sort of dance that you have. You have the dance or the quest for variety, which is suggested by Gemini, and the quest for truth and wisdom, which is suggested by Jupiter. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Bybreen Samuels, and I help baby boomers reinvent themselves psychologically, practically, and technically so they can thrive in their third act of life. And if you're one of my regulars, welcome back. So in 5 months' time, we have a shift of energy, and Jupiter is one of our gods of change. And the change that he's offering and ushering in is, how are we able to explore and share our wisdom in a way that's going to add value to the people in our lives? Now, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so it's a fire sign. So he is a fire lord, otherwise known as Zeus. And it's very much about wisdom and exploring. How do we eke that out? Now, the terrain of Jupiter, he brings so much abundance and joy and fun and wealth and opportunities. So that's literally what's on offer for each and every one of us. But the problem is that Jupiter, being in Gemini, is actually in the sign that it's its opposite, so it's in detriment, meaning that Sagittarius is one side of the scale and Gemini is on the other. Now, Jupiter being in Gemini doesn't necessarily mean it cannot work its magic. But what it is calling for is for each and every one of us to actually use our mental faculties to discern what are the opportunities in front of us. Now, when we think of Gemini, it's ruled by the planet Mercury, and Mercury is a tiny planet in comparison to Jupiter, which is the largest planet. So Mercury, otherwise known as Hermes, is a god, but he was one of the gods that didn't actually live amongst the pantheon of other gods. And so his role was like an interpreter, a translator, bringing information, and he lived between three worlds. So the world of Olympus, the world of Earth, the tangible world, and the world of Hades, which is the underworld. And so with Mercury, there's this flexibility. Mercury rules two signs. One is earthbound, which is Virgo, very tangible, very serious, very analytical. But when Mercury is actually ruling Gemini, there's a flightiness, there's an ease, there's a flexibility. So the words that are associated with Gemini are flexibility and freedom. And there is very much this sense of sharing of ideas. So just imagine you're out somewhere at a dinner party, at a restaurant, just hanging out with friends. And it's this sense of, did you hear about so and so? It's gossipy, or I've come across this new idea and I wanted to share it with you. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? So you can literally see Gemini in action, and Mercury, it's like chitty chatty, chitty chatty. And it's really about communication. And I want you to think about Gemini from the point of view like social media. The billions or trillions of messages that are sent every single day is very much representative of Mercury and Gemini, the sharing of ideas. Now, the strength of that is great because you're in community, and Gemini is very much about localized community. Superficiality. They're surface level because there's so much sharing of ideas or coming up with ideas. And it's not so much about deep rumination. It is more about, oh, that's quite interesting. And it's an intellectual pursuit. Whereas when Jupiter enters that terrain and that domain, Jupiter is quite the opposite. Jupiter is inviting us to explore where can we tap into our sense of gravitas. And that can be generated by the fact that Jupiter rules the realm, rules the world of philosophy, the higher mind, religion, perspectives, points of view, the moral compass. And given that Jupiter really is about the guru, the teacher, the wise one. So we've got this bit of a dichotomy going on here. We have Jupiter that wants us to demonstrate and share our wisdom. And then on the other hand, we have Mercury and we have Gemini that wants to be flitting around. And when Jupiter enters Gemini on May the 25th next year for about a year, is calling for us to use our intellectual faculties, but not just for gossiping reasons or just for the sharing of ideas, but how can we begin to translate? How do we extract the wisdom that we have? And us as baby boomers have lived at least, 6 decades and beyond. How do we use our wisdom? How do we extract it and how do we share it? Now, with Jupiter and Sagittarius, there's very much the lens of the world. So Jupiter brings expansion. It's this panoramic view of the world of ideas, but the philosophical ideas. And it's very much a sense of the whole world. It's the globe. So we can learn so much from each other. We can learn so much from different cultures and races and perspectives. And we bring it into, we're creating like our sandbox. And from within our sandbox, we're creating a mosaic. I want you to think about also that Jupiter and this sense of wisdom, think about life like a jigsaw. So you've got all these, pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, and you're trying to create this completed picture. Now, when Jupiter is journeying through Gemini, Gemini is about ideas. And so as each and every one of us becomes more conversant and more, exploring ideas, expanding them, and we're connecting what appears to be disparate dots between different areas, different themes, different subjects. It's like a piece of the jigsaw. And so we're slotting in the jigsaw pieces. And by slotting in the jigsaw pieces, instead of rushing at information in the way that Gemini does, we are creating this beautiful mosaic, which is this jigsaw puzzle that gives us gravitas and depth. Jupiter in Gemini, what we're also going to begin to see are more social commentators. Now, social commentators have always existed, but we're Jupiter in Gemini. So it's about the communication of ideas around the world, but commenting on what is happening in the world, Jupiter's symbol. So examples of, over the ages of social commentators, think about somebody like Muhammad Ali, who has Jupiter in Gemini in his chart. Now, he was first interviewed by Michael Parkinson back in the 70s. In fact, it was on October the 17th, 1971. I was very much alive. Don't quite recall that interview, but, I grew up with Muhammad Ali. So with somebody with Jupiter in Gemini, he used to shout from the rooftops, "I am the greatest," which is a great celebration of Jupiter and wisdom and abundance and that sense of confidence. But in Gemini, he was also a fantastic social commentator and a political critic of what was going on in the world. And, he was coming through the 60s and 70s and lived through that. For example, when he won the Olympic gold medal, that was fantastic, celebrating for America. But as soon as he got back, he was denied service in restaurants because he's a Black man walking through the world in America. And so social commentators, we're going to see the rise of them, the next iteration of commentators who are sparking ideas. And each and every one of us is a commentator, but it's a commentator beyond the sense of what X or Twitter or any of the other social medias where it's throwaway, but it's about the planting of ideas that gives us a sense of gravitas And in doing so, we are helping to shape the world. Now, the backdrop and the context in which Jupiter will be journeying through Gemini is when Pluto moves into Aquarius. So Pluto in Aquarius and Jupiter in Gemini, right at the beginning, they're going to be about 1-2 degrees, because Jupiter will be at 0 degrees, 1 degree, whereas Pluto will be around that degree, but will be moving slower. Now, this is a fantastic signature, because Jupiter, together with Pluto in Aquarius, brings an opportunity of attracting fantastic people into our lives who could be really transformational friends, who are going to help you deconstruct and strip away the veneer and the superficiality of Gemini, what it can offer. And what it's saying when you bring Jupiter and Pluto, because they are two gods of change, it's time to dig deep, unearth the gems and the jewels that are lying underneath the surface, which is very much Pluto's terrain, and then piece it together with Jupiter and the wisdom. Means that we are elevating our own lives because we're opening our minds to new ideas. Pluto being that they're going to be transformational ideas that will be gathered from within the masses, because Pluto is going through Aquarius. The second aspect to Jupiter trining Pluto is this is a fantastic signature of generational wealth. From a predictive astrology point of view, when you've got Jupiter, and it's a very positive connection with Pluto, this is like you're really mining money. And whatever Jupiter touches, it's always going to be expanding what it touches. So pay attention. Where does Jupiter and Pluto, where do they fall in your chart? If they fall into the money houses, well, that's fantastic. But even if they don't fall into the money houses per se, or you don't have that signature in your chart, by transit, it's entering all of our charts and our lives. Now, coming back to the social commentator and Muhammad Ali. So Muhammad Ali gave this interview with Michael Parkinson, and Michael Parkinson had said, over the decades that he was the most extraordinary person that he had ever met and ever interviewed. Now, when Muhammad Ali was proselytizing and criticizing the treatment of Black people in America, particularly that first interview in October, or on October the 17th, 1971, October the 17th means that this interview took place in Scorpio. And so Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. The first ruler was Mars, second ruler is Pluto. So what's happening? We have Jupiter in Gemini, which is about communication, which is about depth, which is about wisdom, making a positive aspect with Pluto in Aquarius, and Pluto in Aquarius will be squaring Scorpio. So Pluto will be squaring the sign it rules. And so don't be surprised as we as the masses individually and then collectively come together in a way to shake up the world. We're going to be unearthing lies, deceit, contempt, manipulation. But in the unearthing of this, we are speaking a truth. We are populating our world and the world with truths that's going to uplift each and every person. It's going to uplift humanity. So it's a very powerful transit that's taking place. Now, sometimes you don't have to actually leave where you are to travel the world. That's very much a signature of Jupiter and Sagittarius. Jupiter's connection is about the world, learning from each other from around the world. We can learn from each other literally on our doorsteps or in our local environments or through ideas. Now, there's a trend that's building up in Chicago that they say is going to be rising. It's not only Chicago, but just watch out for this trend and the trend of the supper club. So in Chicago, there's this emergence of this trend of supper clubs. And you're thinking, well, that's food. What has that got to do with Jupiter and Pluto in particular? The interesting trend that's building up is that these supper clubs are now being hosted in unusual settings, not necessarily a formal restaurant setting. But it does tie in with Jupiter in Gemini because supper clubs can be quite intimate environments, 15, 20, 30 people, just imagine it. Sharing of ideas. Yeah. So there's people, what did you say? Did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? But with Jupiter in the mix, it's about art and culture and philosophy and music, just the things that shape our lives from a cultural perspective, which is very much a signature of Jupiter. So, supper clubs and the trend of supper clubs is something that we'll begin to see more of, where people are sharing ideas about the world, a book they've read or a piece of art. And these supper clubs are taking place in places like art galleries or in church environments or religious environments. Here, it's a wonderful blend of Jupiter, wisdom, knowledge, reflection, perspective. Jupiter also calls us into those moments of quiet, mature reflection when we are really ruminating on a particular idea and with a view possibly to teach, because Jupiter is the guru. It's about sharing of knowledge and information. It rules the ninth house, and the ninth house is all about education, teaching, learning. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean formal education, higher education, expanded education. And then we have Gemini, which is always searching and sifting for facts and information and bringing those two together in environments like supper clubs or just intimate environments where we are sharing ideas, is what we're going to begin to see. Now, the flip side of Jupiter in Gemini, and Gemini in particular, is there's a lack of discernment because there's a kind of quick. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. It's quick, it's fleeting, it's like in, then out, and then moving on to something else. So it doesn't necessarily encourage the digestion of information, whereby you can be thinking, actually, what is my belief? What do I believe as opposed to what do I do? That's a nice kind of contrast for you. Jupiter is into truth and beliefs. Gemini is about facts, but it's facts that are disposable. And what you're trying to do is create an elixir between what's going on in the world and what your own views are, and which requires you to be more discerning about the information and about people in and around your own life. And what we may begin to see more of when we're in conversations with people, that classic question, what do you do? I hate that question with such vigor. But anyway, that's for another conversation. But the what do you do question, invariably, and if you're a boomer or anybody else and you have this thing that you do, you define yourself by your job title. I do X, I do Y, and then you start pontificating about whatever that is. But that is the what of what you do, or the what of who you are. Whereas, questions like, well, what lights the fire in you? Or what are you pulled by internally? What are you pulled by? What do you believe? Now, that question opens up so much. And given that Jupiter is the god of opportunities and abundance, when we get into conversations that explore what we believe, therefore the veneer of that, the thing that you do, gets removed and put to one side. And what you're left with is an exploration of actually, what do you stand for? And so people like Muhammad Ali, for example, or Huey P. Newton or Oprah Winfrey, who've become or were known as social commentators, That's one expression. The other expression is the more that we talk about what we believe helps us to ground ourselves in who we are based on truth. And that's a distinction between Jupiter and Gemini. Gemini wants to bombard you with all these facts as a way to convince you. You know, Geminians and Jupiter and Gemini can be really good at sales and PR and marketing and being charismatic and all of that. That is one aspect. But actually, Jupiter intuitively knows the truth. So, you know, sometimes we get this gut feeling, somebody's telling us something, and it's just like, I don't think so. So it's about the discernment of truth and what's actually been told to you, said to you, what somebody's sharing with you. So Jupiter in Gemini is calling for you to throw off the superficiality, to get into more discernment about, be discerning about the facts. And so the other planet that Mercury rules is Virgo. And Virgo is very much about give me the facts. So when we bring Jupiter into Gemini, you want to sprinkle it with some of the facts. What are the facts of X, Y, and Z? But where's the truth within all of that? So there's 5 more months before Jupiter enters into Gemini, but it's about this preparation of what do you stand for? What are your beliefs? And in the sharing of the beliefs and your ideas, you're sharing them with people. And somebody might say to you, you know what? I know somebody who can help you with X, Y, and Z. Don't forget that Jupiter brings opportunity. It brings abundance. It opens doors for you. So the more that you're in your truth of what is real, and that's built up from wisdom, extracted wisdom, having a sense of the world around you, interpreting the world, but setting it within this possible philosophical context is the way that can be very beneficial for you as Jupiter enters Gemini. So that's what I wanted to share with you on this fantastic Christmas Eve. Can you believe it? We're only a week away until it's New Year. Thank you to everybody who has supported my channel, continues to support my channel, every single person that watches my episodes. Thank you all so much. Wishing you a fantastic holiday season, because you might not actually celebrate Christmas, but it's holiday time. Have a fantastic time. And I'd love to hear about your relationship with Jupiter, or where are you with Gemini? And are you a fickle person? And is there a way that you can start exploring yourself with these ideas that help you think beyond the ego, think beyond the trivial, and get into more discernment and truth and wisdom? Have a fantastic holiday season period. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And thank you so much. And I will see you again, yes, on New Year's Eve, where I will be next week. I think I might be sharing insights as to the main transits that will be happening in January. I sort of give you an overview. As you know, for those of you who have been with me for quite some time, my channel started off as astrology. Astrology is still the heart of who I am and what I do, but I've expanded the channel over the last year to include this thesis around helping baby boomers to reinvent themselves psychologically, practically, and technically. So astrology will always be a pillar of the content, but I will be continuing to dovetail in other things like technology or emotional intelligence or travel, just that surround soundness that helps build the lives of baby boomers. So wishing you a fantastic Christmas, and I will see you again next week. Oh, I've just seen there are some comments on here. Let's see. Aha. Hello, Ursu. I think the name is Ursu. Hi. Great to see you here. And I think it's Ursu again. Who's baby boomer? Lovely, 1962. Oh, you have yours. Okay, you have Jupiter in Gemini. To hear, I'd love to hear how that is. Let me just pop this up here. Yes, one of the happen with Jupiter in Gemini, forgot to mention that Jupiter has a 12-year cycle. and having a 12-year cycle. Think back to what you were doing in 2012, 13, because Jupiter was in Gemini then. Just think back to that time. What was going on in your life? So, for example, in my life, I wrote the first draft of my book because Jupiter entered Gemini around about early June 2012. And then later on, or the next month, it was the London 2012 Olympics, which I'm really into sports. And I remember that summer was when I used the time to write the first draft of my book. So again, we're seeing what fingerprints were left 12 years ago that may be echoed in another way in this season of Jupiter in Gemini. Anyway, put your comments in the comment box below. Would love to connect with you, and I will see you again. Have a great Christmas, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.